This is Anthony Gavin, the mastermind behind one of the most daring heists in British history, the Baker Street Robbery. He pulled it off with his crew, making millions disappear from a bank vault beneath London streets. This wasn't just any heist. Gavin and his team dug a secret tunnel to bypass security, and the money they took was all liquid cash, ready to spend. Gavin and his gang thought they had executed the perfect crime and could escape without a trace, but they made one fatal mistake, underestimating the determination of the police. Hundreds of detectives were assigned to the case, piecing together clues to hunt them down. But how did a man from London's underground world manage to pull off one of the biggest heists in British history? Welcome to the insane true story of Anthony Gavin and the Baker Street Robbery. The Baker Street Robbery wasn't just any crime. It was a masterfully orchestrated heist that blended audacity with meticulous planning. Lloyd's Bank, located at 187 Baker Street, just a short stroll from the famous Sherlock Holmes Museum, became the target of a plot that was months in the making. At the heart of this bold plan was Anthony Gavin, a former British Army training instructor. Gavin had a bold idea inspired by one of the Sherlock Holmes stories, The Red-Headed League, where criminals tunnel into a bank vault from a neighboring shop. With this in mind, Gavin saw an opportunity and began assembling his crew. One of Gavin's associates, Benjamin Wolfe, was a 64-year-old seller of odd goods who had connections to the criminal underworld. In May 1971, Wolfe purchased the lease of Lissac, a leather goods store just 2 doors away from Lloyd's Bank, for £10,000. On the surface, Wolfe appeared to run a legitimate business, but behind closed doors, he and the rest of the gang were working tirelessly, digging a tunnel that would go unnoticed by the public. "Oh, gather intel." Gavin turned to Reginal Tucker, a second-hand car salesman with a clean record, for this task. Tucker opened a bank account with a £500 deposit and, over the course of several months, made 13 trips to his safety deposit box. Each time he visited the vault, Tucker was left alone, giving him the perfect chance to take measurements. Using his umbrella, the span of his arms, and even the size of the floor tiles, Tucker diligently mapped out the space. With every trip, the plan came closer to execution, and the stakes grew higher. Gavin successfully recruited Thomas Stevens, a salesman without a criminal record, to secure essential tools like a thermal lance and a heavy-duty jack. They also brought on Bobby Mills as a lookout, keeping watch while the others worked. Mills was connected to Brian Reeder, often known as the Master. Reeder is a well-known figure in the criminal world and earned a reputation for his clever planning and smooth execution. As the crew expanded, so did the tension. Each member brought their distinct expertise, increasing the potential for both success and failure. The crew had to move carefully, acutely aware that even the smallest misstep could lead to disaster. The stakes were incredibly high, and the pressure was mounting. Each shovelful of dirt they removed brought them closer to their goal, but also increased the risk of being caught. Would they manage to execute one of the largest bank heists in London's history? Or would they end up in prison, their dreams turned to dust? On September 11th, everything was in place for the grand heist. Armed with walkie-talkies and a lookout on the roof, the crew was ready to strike. They had worked tirelessly, digging only on weekends to keep their plan hidden, ensuring everything was perfect by September 10th. Anthony Gavin led the tunneling effort from Lissac, digging directly underneath the bank vault. They managed to create a narrow 15-inch wide hole that brought them into the basement of the Chicken Inn, which acted as the roof of their tunnel. But they ran into trouble when they unexpectedly hit an old well right where they had planned to break through. Instead of punching through the vault floor as intended, their heavy equipment sent them down into the well. In desperation, they switched tactics, using a thermic lance, but that also failed. So they drilled holes and filled them with gelignite. On Saturday, they carefully timed the blast to blend in with the noise of city traffic outside, hoping to stay unnoticed. They produced 8 long tons of debris, quickly disposing of it behind LeSac. Inside the vault were hundreds of safety deposit boxes filled with cash, jewels, and priceless belongings. Over the course of the weekend, the gang looted 268 safety deposit boxes, walking away with a haul worth between £1,250,000 and £3 million. They thought they had pulled off the perfect heist. But there was one major flaw. They had underestimated the power of radio waves. On September 11th, at around 11 p.m., Robert Rowlands, an amateur radio enthusiast living in a flat on Wimpole Street, found himself tuning into something far more serious than he had anticipated. Half a mile from Lloyd's Bank, Rowlands stumbled upon a series of walkie-talkie conversations that piqued his suspicion. Initially, he thought he was overhearing a petty cigarette shop robbery, but soon realized the situation was much more dire. By 11:30 p.m., Rowlands made the decision to call the police. However, when he described what he was hearing, the officer on the other end brushed it off as a prank, instructing him to record the conversation if anything seemed noteworthy. Not deterred, Rowlands grabbed his cassette recorder and began documenting the escalating drama. The voices crackled through the radio, thick with tension. "Listen closely," one said with urgency. "You need to keep watch for an hour, then get off the air and rest. Come back at 6 in the morning." But another voice pushed back, eager to complete the job that night. "The place is filled with fumes from cutting," the first voice cautioned. "If security smells it, we're finished. We might have a shot if we wait until morning." Frustration bubbled over as the lookout fired back. "Money may be your god, but it's not mine. I'm done here." The argument simmered until a calm, firm woman's voice, along with a more authoritative figure, convinced him to stay. Reluctantly, he agreed, and they updated him on their progress. "We've gotten through 90% of the easy boxes. Now the hard ones remain." The crew carried on with their heist, oblivious to the fact that someone was eavesdropping. By 2 a.m., Rowlands knew he had enough evidence to warrant another call to the police. This time, instead of reaching out to his local station, he made the bold decision to contact Scotland Yard directly. Scotland Yard sprang into action, but there was one problem. The robbers never mentioned which bank they were robbing. London had hundreds of banks, and the police had no idea where to start. They quickly contacted bank staff and local security firms, sending teams out to check 750 banks within an 8-mile radius. By 3:30 p.m. on September 12th, officers arrived at the Baker Street branch of Lloyd's Bank to discover the extent of the robbery. On September 12th, Scotland Yard kicked off a major investigation, but the robbers had been careful, leaving behind almost no traces. The only real lead was the amateur radio recording Rowlands had made. He had managed to capture bits of their conversations, but it wasn't enough to pinpoint who they were. The gang had disappeared, leaving behind more questions than answers. In the days following the robbery, rumors began to circulate. The public speculated about what the gang was truly after. Was it merely cash and jewels, or something far more sensitive? The UK government moved swiftly to suppress details of the heist, imposing a media blackout to keep the story from gaining traction. In a highly unusual move, Britain's National Archives sealed most of the files related to the case for 100 years, until 2071. This level of secrecy only fueled more speculation. One theory captivated the public's imagination. Could the robbery be connected to the British government or even the royal family? Whispers suggested that compromising documents or photos were hidden inside the vault, which, if uncovered, could ignite a national scandal. Although no evidence ever surfaced to support this theory, the rumors added a layer of intrigue to an already mysterious case. Some days later, the investigation team assembled swiftly, analyzing 800 pieces of evidence. A massive force of up to 120 detectives was deployed, organized into 4 specialized teams, each focusing on different aspects of the case. Within a few days, the police identified key suspects, including Anthony Gavin and Thomas Stevens, thanks to lease documents and tips from informants. Surveillance efforts revealed a crucial connection between a newly acquired pub and Gavin, tightening the noose around the gang. As detectives followed the leads, they observed Reginal Tucker handing over a suspicious bag to 2 men, which led to their arrest and the recovery of £32,000 in stolen cash. By the conclusion of the investigation, several key players, including Wolf, Gavin, and Stevens, had been arrested, and £231,000 of the stolen loot was recovered. Despite their near-perfect heist, justice wasn't far behind. Anthony Gavin, Thomas Stevens, and Reginal Tucker faced the consequences of their crime, each receiving 12-year sentences. Wolf was given a lighter sentence of 8 years because he was in his 60s. However, not all of the stolen fortune was recovered, and some gang members vanished without a trace. Decades later, the Baker Street robbery continued to captivate imaginations. It wasn't just the audacity of the crime, it was the mystery surrounding it. What were the robbers truly after? Were they merely thieves, or did they have powerful backers? These questions linger unanswered. What we do know is that the Baker Street robbery laid the groundwork for countless heist films, books, and TV shows. It was a crime that defied expectations and ignited theories that still intrigue us today. A perfect heist, perhaps, but one with a legacy that even the robbers could not have foreseen. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of one of London's most notorious heists. If you enjoyed the story, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more true crime mysteries. Who knows what we'll uncover next?